We are bringing you a special episode today. This is Mike Forfia interviewing Victor Wooten, and this is an interview that was released in the most recent International Society of Bassists journal, that's Bass World, and it's one of the many things that you get as a member of the ISB. There are so many reasons to join the ISB. I've been a member for over 25 years, and I get so much benefit from being part of this organization. In addition to putting on amazing conventions, which you have to check out if you haven't before, they're just so wonderful. You get to be listed in the Teachers Directory, Luthier Directory. You get Bass World magazine. You get access to the George Vance online library with over 45 years of bass publications. You get access to the entire worldwide ISB membership directory, special insurance rates, all sorts of members-only benefits. I would love it so much if you joined this great family of bassists that Mike and Victor and all of us are a part of. I really hope you enjoy this special presentation of Mike Forfia interviewing Victor Wooten.
This is Mike Forfia, and you're listening to a special production from the International Society of Bassists. I recently had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with the great Victor Wooten. My conversation with Victor Wooten was an opportunity to talk about some of the things that he's got going on recently, some of the exciting things he's doing with his new bow bass and with the tour he's been doing with Dennis Chambers and Bob Franceschini. But it was also an opportunity to ask him about some of his thoughts on education and to talk about what we as a society of bassists or as educators and bass players in general can do for the world. Welcome to this special edition of the International Society of Bassists, Bass World. Today I'm speaking with 5-time Grammy Award winner, author, producer, educator, and advocate of all things bass and nature, Mr. Victor Wooten. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
What have you been up to recently?
Well, we'll work backwards. I just landed in Boston, Massachusetts, where I teach 5 days every month at Berklee College of Music. So that's where I am today. And I just came from Korea and Japan, where I did some shows over there. And I've just been keeping busy. A lot of touring. I have a new record that came out in September. So I've been touring that. It's a trio record with a great drummer named Dennis Chambers, great saxophone player named Bob Franceschini. And I've been having fun with that. I've been playing electric. I've been playing some acoustic, upright, as well as my what I call the bow bass, which is just an electric bass I had built. It's a 5-string fretless with a high C, and it's bowable. I strap it on just like an electric, and I bow on it vertically, up and down, rather than horizontally, left and right. And it's a cool thing, and life has been good. I've been able to stay busy in this crazy music business, and things are good. I'm happy to be speaking with you.
Yeah, happy to be speaking with you too. Could we talk about that bow bass a little bit?
Yeah.
What's been your history with the bow? You played cello, correct?
Right. Well, I started as a very, very young kid on electric bass, as the bassist for my brother's band, five-piece band. And I'm the youngest. They needed a bass player. So I've been playing electric bass my whole life. But in Virginia, back in the 70s, they start kids in music programs in the 6th grade. And so I grew up in nightclubs. I was literally, from about age 5 and 6, I was playing in clubs and things on the weekends. So the double basses I had seen were huge to me. I learned now that they're probably 3/4 sizes. But me being a little kid and always being short, even still today, these basses were huge. So when I got into orchestra in the 6th grade, I thought that I would be too small to play in a double bass. So I chose cello. And it was really a blessing in disguise because the cello parts were always more interesting than the bass parts. That was how I learned to read music. So I really had to learn to read music, playing cello. But what was most interesting was the sound of the bow, the sound and the feeling of bowing an instrument. Mm-hmm. Because it was a side that my electric bass didn't have. That sustain with that vibrato, that melodic, the melody, just that whole voice. And since I've been playing cello in the 6th grade, I've always wanted that sound and that feeling on my electric bass. And that has finally resulted in the bow bass, the bass that I can bow. That's where it came from.
That's great. And what kind of experience has that been to get reconnected with the bow?
For me, it's great. I mean, I just love the sound. It's an idea I've had for at least 15 years before we got it built. So to have it in my hands and play it, and the fact that it does work after all these years. Sometimes you have an idea and you're finally making it. No, it doesn't work.
Right.
This actually works. And so I'm so happy, and audiences flip out because they've never seen anything like it. And it is a beautiful sound. You know, it has a learning curve because it's bowing in a totally different way. Mm-hmm. But there's a sound that's really gorgeous. I'm loving it.
And what sort of projects are you using this bass for?
Well, a couple. Lately, again, to work backwards, I've been using it with this new project, this new trio, which is, I guess, considered a jazz trio. But during the show, I do a solo spot. And I set up, with my electric bass, I set up a little mellow pattern. And this pattern is taken, usually what I do is I take a part of a song that I wrote for a bass concerto, the part of the second movement, which is a slow movement. And I set up the chord structure for this melody that I came up with for that concerto. And I bow that melody. And literally people just flip out. It's just a lot of fun. But there's also a song on my new record that I use the bow bass, pizzicato and arco. And so, during our show, we might do both.
Gotcha. So with what you say is considered a jazz trio, you'll take the second movement of the concerto and you can play it in that orchestration.
Exactly. Yeah.
What sort of things have been encouraging you lately? What's been driving you lately?
Well, 10 years ago, I released a book called The Music Lesson, A Spiritual Search for Growth Through Music. And over the last 6 months or so, I've been writing the sequel to that book. And it's just gotten me excited because writing music or anything, it accesses a different part of your brain. And for me, writing a book is a whole lot like writing music, except different, but it's gotten my brain in a different place. That's really, really exciting, and it's open, and ideas just flow, and it's almost like it's just kind of easy once you get into it. It's like the book writes itself, the same way music can write or play itself when you get into that place. And I'm in a prolonged period of that space. And because of it, life is just wonderful. It affects everything else, everything I see, the people I meet. I see them differently. I hear music differently because I'm in that writing space. So I'm in a good place in my life right now. A lot of fun.
You have your hand in many things. You run a bass and nature camp. You author books. You teach. You play the bass, and you play different kinds of basses, and you're involved with writing new pieces and recording new albums. Having all of those things going on at once, how do you stay balanced? How do you stay focused on what you're doing?
A big part of it is by having people to help me in all senses, meaning, my wife is at home right now, making sure that I don't have to worry about the kids. I know that everything's taken care of. They get to school on time. They have lunch. The dogs are fine. So all of that really, really helps. I have a manager who's taking care of my business life, and she makes sure that I don't have to worry about that so that I can just stay creative and play. She handles all the hard work. She'll negotiate for more money, She's the one who can talk about me in a way that I can't talk about myself, things like that. And so without going through everyone, having people around me, even just friends who will tell me the truth. A lot of the times we just want people around us that will agree with us or tell us what we want to hear. But we need friends that'll tell us what we need to hear, regardless of whether we want it or not. Mm-hmm. And I have that. I really do have that. So that's what really helps, is having people around that can help me throughout my life. But also, I do things to stay grounded and to stay balanced. The way that I think, the way that I speak, and the exercises or meditation. But I also, one of the things that I really, really do, knowing that we are bombarded with, for lack of a better term, I'll just say negativity. Meaning most of what we see on television, and I say most loosely, I really don't know what you see, but I'll say a lot of what is on TV. Let's just take the news. In most cases, the news doesn't report it unless it's negative. If there's something nice that happens, it gets a small little feature or mention. But in the paper and on the television, it's the negative thing that wins our attention. And because of that, we are the same way in our daily lives. We don't like to talk about it when we drove through the Arizona desert and everything went well. We had plenty of gas and an air conditioner worked and we had food. We don't talk about that. We talk about it when it went wrong. We've kind of been conditioned to gravitate towards negative things. And I understand it. I do understand it. We gravitate towards the negative things because most things are positive. We're used to things going right. Like right now, nobody's breaking in our houses. Nobody's stealing our car. Things are going well, and this is what we're used to. So we don't think about it too much. I go to my mailbox. My mail is there.
Right.
I only talk about it on the days it's not there and someone stole it. Then it's a big deal and it deserves press and it deserves my attention. Well, I've just kind of trained myself to give attention to when things are going right, which is 99.9.9.9% of the time. Mm-hmm. But we're so used to it so that when something bad jumps out at me, I have trained myself to realize, wow, it's jumping out at me because it's not normal. Yeah. And so the negative things nowadays will help me remember that things are good.
Right.
I caught a little slight cold, just a slight one in Asia. And instead of being so bummed out, I'm like, wow, I forget how well we usually are. Most of the time, our body's healthy, it's working, we're breathing fine, and that just made me feel better, And so, but I do things, I'll wind this narrative up by saying I do things to help foster that, knowing that the press and society is doing things to help me see the negative. I have to do my part to make sure that I continue to see the positive. And so we live in a day of social media. We all have cell phones and computers. I keep things on my cell phone and my computer that remind me every day that things are good. I call them like positive or even spiritual vitamins that I take every day, where there's photographs, there's quotes, there's stories, there's music that I look at on my phone, because my phone's always with me every day, just as reminders, And it's my way of combating what I see when I turn on the TV, and things like, because I like TV, but it's mostly negative. You know, so I want to combat that so I don't unconsciously get taken over by that.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, my life is good. I'm able to see and remember all the beautiful things that are happening around us every day. And I like reminding people of that also.
There's a theme of that in your work. And with this podcast and with this interview, there will be links to your website where people can find out about your bass and nature camps and the programming that you have at Wooten Woods over the course of the summer. People can listen to your albums and to your TED Talks, right, where you lay out a lot of these things. They can read your book. I remember you talking in your book about the way that music can be used for positive or negative, and I've seen you talking about using music as a love bomb, as a way to counter that negative narrative.
Sure.
I wonder if you could talk about specifically with the bass and nature camps or the various teaching and authorship that you've done over the years, how you approach that, or what sort of impact that feeling has in the programming itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to be clear, to let people know that in the year 2000, for the first 7 years, we did bass and nature camps, meaning it was only for bass players. Right. Now, over the last 10 years, that we own our own location, our 150-acre location just outside of Nashville. That's what we call Wooten Woods. Ever since then, for the last 10 years, it's for any instrument, as well as, you know, vocalists, French horn, it doesn't matter.
All ages?
All ages, yeah. Most of our camps are 15 and up, but we do some camps that go down below 15 also. Our schedule is usually very tough. We fit a lot into a day. We start early, we go late. And so we want to make sure that people are of the age that they can handle it. Mm-hmm. So most of our camps are 15 and up. When we go below 15, we shorten the classes, we shorten the days, and try to make it more palatable for that age and attention span. But any instrument now, we still do our bass and nature camp once a year. But all the other camps, we do a camp every month. This year, 2018, will be April through October. We'll do a different camp every month. Mm-hmm. So people can go to my website, victorwooten.com, and check it out. Or they can go straight to the campsite, which is Vic's Camps. That's VIX Camps, CAMPS, VixCamps.com, and check it out. See if there's a program that suits your liking. But the main thing that the camp offers, I believe, is the opportunity for a person to be themselves. And we have some things that we do at camp that are designed to bring the real person out. And in most cases, they don't know they're happening. For example, if you, right now, even as an adult, if we go to a camp and we don't know anyone, we're going to be a little self-conscious. Am I good enough? Maybe I'm the best here. If I hear someone else play, I'm unconsciously going to be comparing myself to that person. All of that stuff. So a lot of people are really subdued, nervous, or whatever. And we have some things that are designed to eliminate that. And one of the best things that I like is that whole mystique of who Victor Wooten is. In other words, people show up, go, oh man, there's Victor Wooten. Oh, that disappears by the middle of the second day. Nobody cares. And I make the joke at the camp that, hey, remember me? I'm Victor Wooten. Guys, remember? Hey, look, it's me.
Right.
Listen to me. And they don't care anymore. And to me, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it's not that my status lowers. Mm-hmm. It's that theirs raises.
Yeah.
They realize that now they're not beneath me. Mm-hmm. They're up on the pedestal. The pedestal they put me on, they are now up there with me. I haven't come off. But they're starting to realize their worth.
Yeah.
And that they are good enough. And they're making new friends, and they're realizing that everybody's good enough. The best quote I've ever gotten from camp, it came from our very first camp in the year 2000. And at the end of that week, at the end of that 5 days, it was a 5-day camp at the time, there was a young kid who came over to me, and he was fighting back tears. It was at the end of the camp. And he said, you know, when I first got here, I was like, wow, there goes Victor Wooten. And he said, now I see everybody that way. And I was like, wow, that was nice, you know. And this was from a bass music camp, you know.
Yeah.
And so I really love that. And the whole premise for the camp, as well as, you know, getting you better at music, is my mom had a quote that she would always tell us boys. She would say, what does the world need with just another good musician? She said the world needs good people. And so in our quest to get better at music, if we're going to spend all this time, energy, money, effort, it should do more than just make us good musicians. It should make us good people and the world better. And that is the underlying premise of our camp.
Right. This podcast is going out through the International Society of Bassists, and their mission is to inspire, educate, and connect. I wonder how this group of listeners could support you in that quest of being not just better musicians, but better people. What can we do to tap into these other essential qualities?
Sure. Well, tap into the goodness of yourself. Love yourself. I know, you know, we're talking about bass and stuff, and this is going to sound, you know, all sound like this. I don't know what it sounds like, but it really starts with how you see yourself, because how you see yourself is how you're going to see other people. If you're having a bad day, you're probably going to see the badness in other parts of life. So really know who you are and realize that just the fact that you are born, you're already special. You know, I mean, we each have a fingerprint on our hand that's never been here before. In the history of humankind, before and after today, this fingerprint will never be here again. That means I'm special. I'm unique. I'm a one of a kind that has never been here and will never be here again. Me is that special. You are that special. That puts us on an equal playing ground, right? And we accept that. In other words, I don't look at my fingerprint and look at yours and say, oh man, I like yours better. You know, we don't look at it that way. I'm already special. And for anybody that knows what it takes to be born, right, the whole process of sperm and all of that stuff, not to go into it, but you have to realize that you've already won the biggest lottery, the biggest race you will ever enter. So even if I do nothing for my life, if I'm a vegetable, if I just sit on the couch and do nothing, I'm still special. I'm not any less special. You can't take that away from me. I can't take it away from you. Doesn't matter what you think of me. What I know about myself is I've won already. Mm-hmm. I'm special. I have something no one else will ever have in the history of humanness. Right? The cool thing about being human is we have the gift or the curse, whatever you want to call it, of choice. I get to choose what I do with this. What I do with this specialness, this fingerprint, this gift, I can choose what to do with it. And I choose to make things better with it. Right? If at all possible, through music, through talking, through friendship, through a wave, through a hug, I want to make other people realize their uniqueness and their specialness. And I just do it through music. And other people can do that too. If you're a music teacher, teach the student to be the best version they can be of themselves. Where a lot of us want our students to be like us. Right? We don't know it all. I know I don't know it all. Mm-hmm. And I want my students to be better than me. The world already has Victor Wooten. What the world doesn't have yet is that little student.
Right.
And that's what the world needs. So we need to build them up as quickly as possible, as honestly as possible, to be the best version of themselves. Right? And we can start by, how we interact with people, helping raise people up to be the best versions of themselves. But we can't get caught up, or it helps if we don't get caught up into the negativities of society. And what I mean by that, it doesn't mean that you ignore them, because they are there, but you don't have to become a part of them. In other words, like we have reality TV now. It's called reality TV shows. You'll get your own show if you are negative enough. We may have, what they might call, I think it was Jersey Shore, or whatever. Or they had a TV show where these women were vying to marry Flavor Flav, the rapper, wears a big clock, Nothing against him.
Flavors of Love.
Flavors of Love, right. If you remember that show, the most evil, worst person on that show that caused the most trouble was a woman called herself New York. She was so horrible on that show that they gave her her own show called I Love New York. And so now there's men wanting to fall in love with her. She only got the show because she was horrible. That's awful that we celebrate horribleness. That's just awful as a society. So for me to work against that, I need to see that and be aware of it. So I'm not trying to ignore it, but I don't become it either.
Right.
That's the whole yin yang of life. You need one to have the other. We're not good people unless there's bad people. We're not bassists unless there's other things, So it all works together. But to answer that question again, it starts with how we see ourselves. And in our making ourselves better, we become an example for others.
Yeah, I don't know what to say after. I'm just kind of letting that digest for a minute. I'm gonna be cutting out this big pause where I just think about that.
Yeah.
I first encountered you and what you had to say and what you did on the bass with a series of videos from Bass Day '98, and then my friend gave me your book. In fact, the copy of your book that I still have is my friend's copy. I need to get it back to him and order myself one. But I saw you for the first time in Rochester at the convention there, and you spoke about your book in a way where you described the value of writing a fictional story with a character to describe some of the things that you wanted to talk about. In what sort of ways does your work stay really attached to who you are and your persona, and what sort of ways do you try and get away from that in order to show certain things?
Sure. Well, in writing a fictional story, I could go further. Like Star Wars or the movie Avatar. The difference between a fictional story and what we might call a documentary, in most cases, is the attitude that the viewer brings to it. When I go to watch Star Wars, we go there smiling and happy, and we just kind of take whatever comes, And I don't even have to believe it. It's just a story, but I'm loose and I'm light. We don't argue over whether Yoda, this little green dude, is real or not, or whether Luke is really Darth Vader's son, There's no argument. But for those of us that really pay attention and hear what Yoda's saying, what Darth Vader's saying, what the Force really is, we get something from it. We go, wow, there's truth there. So there's truth kind of hidden or placed in a fictional story so that we can come to it lightly. And so I stayed away from writing for many years because the students who were coming to our camp, they were liking the information and they wanted it in a book. But I didn't want a book that I would have to defend, because I know that the way I teach and what I talk about is different when it comes to music. It's different than most people. And at my camp is one thing. Talking to you personally is one thing. As soon as you write it, it can be taken however people want. Look at Facebook. Doesn't matter what you put on there. There's going to be people screaming at you. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want that. I didn't want to write something I would have to defend until it hit me. Wait a minute. Write a fictional story. Just write a novel. We'll start from the standpoint that none of this is true. That way I'm cut loose from it. Then I could actually go further in the book. I may be able to talk about things I know, but I can't do yet. I can still put it in there. Usually I'm not teaching what I can't demonstrate, usually. Mm-hmm. And that's my own fault, But in the book, I could put it all in there. And so I was able to write a story. And also in the book, I could talk about my experiences, but I could also talk about your experiences. I could talk about other people's experiences. Maybe I don't get that nervous on stage, but I can still talk about it and have the character get really nervous. Mm-hmm. And things like that. So I could go in ways that I don't always go in my own life, but things that I think about. And that's why I say I could go further with a fictional story rather than having to prove that this is true or this is not. With the fiction, I don't have to prove anything. I didn't even say it. The character said it, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. So there's a lightness that comes with fiction. And that lightness, of course, comes from the author, but it comes from the viewer also, the reader. They come to it in a different mindset than if this is a story that's supposed to be true, a documentary or a nonfiction story.
Right.
And I like that lightness.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier things that you keep in front of you to keep to combat the negativity. Is that
Sure.
something that helps you to stay light, or is there a quality of you that you want to stay light when you approach other things?
Absolutely. And another maybe meaning of light is truthfulness. I want to stay true. Mm. Like I could go through this day to day and look at all the negative things and think it's a bad day. But as my brother Joseph says, a whole lot of things have to go right even to have a bad day. Mm-hmm. Right? And if I want to really be truthful, then I need to look at the good things also. And when I look at the good things, I realize, wow, most of my day is good. Even on a bad day, even on my worst day. Mm-hmm. Right? If you're here to talk about it, that means your heart's beating. You can breathe. There's food on the table. I'm sitting here complaining about while I'm on the internet. That means I got a computer.
Right.
There's so many things. We're just used to it. Mm-hmm. I'm not living on the streets. There's snow outside, but I'm inside. There's so many things that we take for granted. And so for me, that staying light is really staying truthful, mm-hmm. being honest about how good things really are. Now, a lot of people hear me say this, and they might mistake me for saying that I ignore the bad parts or the negative. And no, that's not true. It's not true. I just don't let them paralyze me. I don't let them take over my life. And so that's the difference.
Yeah. I don't know if we could kind of move back a little bit. You were talking about each individual and how everybody is individual. And I feel like sometimes what can be perceived as good or bad or lightness or darkness or truthfulness can just be to see someone else do something that you wish you were doing or that you could do. And
sure.
And are there things that you do or that you guide your students to do to acknowledge those things and support them and not feel that creep up on your own sense of worth or identity or anything like that?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I learned as a kid, and I hope this answers the question, is that when I saw somebody who could do something, I remember seeing Stanley Clarke for the first time. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing Jocko. I never got to see Jocko, but I remember hearing Jocko. I remember my brothers making me stay up to watch the Merv Griffin show because there was this bass player named Ray Brown that I had to see, you know. And all of these people were doing things I couldn't do. But it made me happy because it was showing me possibility. Mm. Where a lot of us have been trained to see it as negative because I can't do it and he can. Mm-hmm. You know, I am happy that these people can do it. I'm happy for them, but I'm also happy for me. Because if they can do it, I can do it. All right? The same way if you can say a word, I can say that word. Mm-hmm. I'm not so, envious. Oh, man, I wish I could say that word, and you shouldn't be able to say it. I should be able to say it.
I say it better than you do. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I don't have that. You know, right. I didn't grow up with that. So I don't live with that. When I see you do something that's really cool, I'm excited for you. Man, that's amazing. But also, if I want to do it, I'm going to learn it. Mm-hmm. You know, not to be better, because I can't do it. No matter how good I get it, I can't do it the way you do it. Right? I can only do it the way I do it. So I'm going to do it with my own voice anyway. And I just realize that. So I get inspired by seeing other people do things, you know, even when they're doing them better than me. You know, I really realize that it's just different, you know. And so I get inspired and excited, you know, by so many things in life. It's just hard not to be inspired, hard not to be excited about the wonders of life. You know, I don't get bored. You know, that's just somebody I heard a saying that says only the boring get bored. And I understand that. But I also realize that it's a lack of attention. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're bored, then you're not looking around enough. You're not inquisitive enough. There's too many wonderful things going on at all the time to ever get bored. There's too many things I could be doing that aren't boring. Mm-hmm. And if I'm bored, I'm just mentally lazy.
Yeah, or inundated, just need to focus in on something.
Yeah, sometimes focusing in or focusing out. A lot of the time it's because we're focused in on this one little thing that's not going right. Oh, I got the taxes.
Right.
You know, and that's robbing me of everything else that's going on. You know, all this beauty around me, you know. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's focusing in, sometimes it's focusing out. But I'm just one that says, you know, even in the state of our economy and politics and our world, life is still beautiful. You know, we still live in a wonderful place. I get to talk to wonderful people who appreciate what I do. You know, I just love to play music and people want to talk to me about it. Mm-hmm. To me, life is wonderful, you know. And when I realize that, when I live that, it only gets more wonderful.
Right.
You know. And I don't want to be in this alone. I don't want to be in this wonderful world alone. I want you to see how wonderful your life is too.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, to me, that's what everything I do is about. Whether it's music, whether it's camps, whether it's writing, it's about the wonders of life. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think I sort of, with that in mind, I probably have 2 or 3 more questions. Don't necessarily hold me to that.
All right.
One or two are about the same. We are involved with bass communities. Bass players have this fantastic commitment to banding together and supporting each other. Sure. But bass players get together. It's a particular energy about it that can really be special. And I wonder, the ISB just went over this big milestone, 50th anniversary, and people of all generations. And people are connecting in ways that they've never connected before with technology and everything. What is the greatest opportunity in that community or in the communities with the bass and nature camps or the music and nature camps or your students? What's the greatest opportunity that we have right now with these tools that we have to collaborate and to connect?
Well, yeah, it is to remember that we're connecting with everybody, not just each other. It is. To me, the different instruments, we have to, as beautiful as it is, to be able to go to a bass convention and connect with other bass players rather. That's beautiful, but there's also a problem that can arise from it. I look at, and I hope this comes across right, I have to tread lightly here. I look at the different instruments sort of like the different races of society. And if I go to an all-black convention, there's some problems that will probably show up about who we are and are we better and are we equal, are we whatever. Where at least in music as the bass, here's the thing I like about music, is that music is a representation of how the world should be. In other words, a band, an orchestra is better when all the instruments are different. If we just had an all bass orchestra, yeah, if the musicians are good, it's going to be good, but it won't be as good as an orchestra with different instruments. People will like it more when there's differences. So in music, we celebrate the differences, right? The orchestra is better when we're different. In music, we have to listen to each other, right? We have to take turns, right? These are all great qualities of a human being. Music celebrates that. So I'm a product of the 60s. I was born in 64. I've been a bass player at least since 66. I've been playing the bass. So that's 51 years for me. What I'm starting to see, still, it's all beautiful. I love these conventions. I love it all. But here's what I'm starting to see. Well, let me go back again. One of the reasons I believe the bass community is so cool, the basses are so cool, is that we're used to being in the background. The whole design for inventing our instrument, the whole purpose is to support other musicians, right? Whoever invented the bass, electric or acoustic, I'm sure they weren't sitting there thinking, oh man, I just invented the world's greatest solo instrument. It was designed to support other people. The bass is like the foundation, right? Nobody walks into a room and compliments the foundation, right? When you're doing your part, you go unnoticed. As a whole, we are comfortable with that as bassists, right? That is a holier than thou mentality, to be able to be satisfied supporting other people and not get credit. Wow. But that's our whole world. But I also see that changing. Like, just to use the ISB as an example, I'll go to the ISB, and I remember being there, and there was a room or something where people could check out bows or check out basses and everything. And I see people in there just like playing up high, amazingly fast, like, Edgar Meyer and beyond. And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy's not testing this bass out. This guy's just showing off his stuff.
Sure.
So I see the mentality changing because now we have ability. We can play fast. I can play as high as a violin, faster than a trumpet, and we're liking that attention. Not that it's wrong, but it can be. And so I can see the mentality of the instrument changing, where a lot of us want to learn the flash before we learn the basics. It's like we're practicing and learning the icing before we even have a cake to put the icing on. Mm-hmm. And so, as teachers, as a society, as educators, as friends, hopefully there's a way that we can regulate, curb, control, or whatever that, so that our students, our comrades, are learning the role of the instrument first. And we have to remember that bass is not an instrument first. Bass is a role that music needs to be complete. That's what's first. That's why to have a full drum set, you need a bass drum. A drum set without the bass drum sounds incomplete, right? If a piano player plays a chord, it needs a bass note to be complete. A guitar the same way. right? So bass is a role that's needed. It's like the base of a house or anything. It's a role that's needed for music to be complete. We use an instrument to do that, fulfill that role. But it can be a bass drum. It could be a tuba. In Mexico, it'll be a guitarrón. All right? It could literally be a trombone. It could be keyboard bass. Doesn't matter. Not one is better than the other. It's a role that's needed. And many of us are learning to play the instrument and forgetting about the role. And I'm not even going to say that that's wrong. But I hope that more of us are remembering the role first. And will learn the role in its completeness first. And then start branching upwards and outwards.
Yeah, that can be a tough thing, especially in certain kinds of music or in certain kinds of environments when the role is getting defined in a certain way, and maybe someone's thinking, okay, well, I'm an upright bass player, I'm an electric bass player, or I'm a guitarist or whatever. Do you ever get caught up in what ways people define that role in certain kinds of music?
Yes.
Do you have thoughts on that?
I do.
You were talking about the bass as an instrument, but also, more importantly, as a role.
Sure.
And I was wondering if you ever get caught up, or if students or people that you speak to ever get caught up with the way the role gets defined in certain kinds of music, related
Absolutely.
to instruments or not.
Okay. I teach now at Berklee College of Music every month, 5 days, and it's probably the greatest place in the world. You know, there's teachers who have been teaching here in the bass department over 40 years. It's amazing. So I get to see students of all ages from around the world. And to answer your question, I think a lot of it needs to start with us as teachers, how we teach music. I don't know how it is in the orchestra or with double bass, but I know in our electric bass world, the bassists, we are part of a section of the band that's called the rhythm section. The bass, the drums, the keyboards, and the guitar, together we make up the rhythm section. And what that means is our goal, our main purpose is supposed to be provide the rhythm, the foundation for the other instruments to stand upon. It's basically a support role. We are instruments of service. But for the most part, we don't teach it that way. We teach you notes first. We teach you chords, scales, and we do all of that. And there's very, very little rhythm exercises. There's almost no exercises about how to support a band. We talk about it. We mention it, passing by, but there's no exercises. There's no theory behind it. The only theory pertains to notes. All we call music theory only deals with 12 notes, and our country only has 12. And all the theory only deals with that. All ear training deals with pitches. We learn chords, scales, modes, key signatures, pitches. But I thought you told me I was rhythm section. Where's the rhythm theory? What does a person's body do when I play this rhythm? When should I go to whole notes versus half notes? Where's the theory behind this? Who's teaching it? Only the really, really good teachers are going into that. Most of us are teaching what notes to play over this chord. If you have good rhythm, I don't care what note you play. Especially if you're playing jazz, nobody's listening to the notes the bass player is playing. It's a feel. You listen to those old records, man, it's a feel back there that's going on. Like the kick drum, there's no pitch that matters. Yes, we want to know the notes. We want to know the notes, but even if I guess what note it is, it's going to be right more than half the time. Right? There's always 7 out of 12 right notes. I can guess. But to put all the attention on, I have to play this note, I have to play that note, it takes the attention off, wow, I'm screwing up the rhythm. And if I screw up the rhythm, any note's not going to work. But that's too long of a diatribe just to say, sure. I think we should spend more time on the feel, the rhythm of the music. right? There's a great professional bass player who I grew up listening to who says all the time you can't play until you know what note to play. That's as backwards as it comes. A baby doesn't have to know what word to say to talk. Baby says any sound. It's the emotion that comes out of it that tells us what the baby means. And the parents learn everything the baby's saying, even though it's not correct. You know, the thing is, it's more correct than incorrect. The only thing that's not correct is the word. The emotion, the tone, the phrasing, the feeling, that's all there. And that's enough that the parents know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And in music, it's no different. If you play a note with confidence, on time, on rhythm, I can play the wrong note so wrong and so powerful that you'll think the rest of the band is wrong. That's what you should be teaching. Mm-hmm. Right? A lot of us are so concerned with being right that we play as if we're walking on eggshells. Right? And that's not the way to support a band. You don't support anything with eggshells. Right? So this will sound egotistical, and I'm not against anyone or any teacher, but I can get a person to play jazz and to sound jazzy within a few minutes. And it mainly comes down to, have you heard jazz before? Do you know what it's supposed to feel like? If you know what it's supposed to feel like, we are there. Because especially in jazz, the more wrong notes you play, the better. Right? The whole thing is about how to play wrong notes in the right way. Mm-hmm. Right? But the right way is by making it feel right. Yeah. And so when I teach music through feel first. We'll learn the notes later. Again, there's only 12 total. Right? And 7 of them are always right. That's the easy part. Right? There's an unlimited amount of dynamics, feel, articulations, phrases. Right? We get that right. Doesn't matter what note you play. It's going to feel right and sound right. And then I demonstrate it to the people, to the students. This is what I do at my camp where we have time. I demonstrate to them. We talk about all the different elements of music, notes only being one of them. But what else in music is just as equal to notes? Well, there's rhythm, yes. There's phrasing, articulation, tone, feel. We need technique before we can play anything. Right? You have to be a good listener. How do we practice that? Where's the theory behind it? Where are the exercises? Who's teaching how to not play? When do you add space? Where's the theory behind it? Right? We're teaching everyone how to play, that we rush through the spaces because I just want to play again. There's so many things that are just as important that we don't teach. We put all the importance on notes. And so even though we're rhythm section, we're treated as if we're the note section. And even more so, the right note section. You know? And so in getting a person to play the right feel, to play the way a dancer dances. If a song comes on, a dancer doesn't have to ask what key it's in. What's the feel? You know, is it 12-bar blues? A dancer just dances. You feel the music? Music makes your body move. Musicians, the more they know, the more we've learned, can't do that. Hey, let's play this. Okay, what key? What's the phrase? Who's solo first? Why all these questions? Mm-hmm. Let's just play. When we get together to talk, we don't have to ask each other questions first. Mm-hmm. Hey, what do you want to talk about, Mike? Right? Hey, man, I learned these new words, so I need you to say this to me in an interview. You know, we just start talking. Right? Why can't we play music that way? Mm-hmm. And it's the minority of people who can. We aren't free, and it comes from the top down. We don't teach that freedom. We teach rules. We teach. A student comes to us with their mind, their ideas open. And the more we teach, the narrower it gets. Before you know anything, if I say, hey, what can you play on a A minor sharp 11 chord? Before you know anything, you play anything. As soon as I teach you, now you only play these few notes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes our teaching narrows the possibilities where it should be broadening the student's mind. And so we have to be careful as teachers Are we diminishing the person or helping the person grow? And we have to be careful about that. But again, to go back, the bass is a role. It's a role before it's an instrument. And so for one mentality to say this instrument's better than that instrument, the double bass is better than the electric, oh no, the 5-string's better than the 4-string, we gotta be careful with that. That should not be our mentality. Our instrument was not designed for that. Our instrument is an instrument of service. We are here to support people. And for the most part, we're still doing it. But in both worlds of the double bass and the electric bass, I see that slowly changing with the new young mentality. I see it at the ISB when they're testing the basses. I see little show-off sessions. Not all the time. And I see it on YouTube with the electric basses. We learn one little thing cool enough to put it on YouTube. We get it right once, but we recorded it, we post it, and then we just sit back and count the number of hits. But the people out there that are gigging, they're not posting music videos. They got too many gigs, So it's a different mentality. And I'm not even saying one is better than the other. But I guess in my mind, I think one is better than the other. But I have to be careful as to what I say is better for someone else.
Sure.
But I think it's something that can be looked at. And as vocalists, as teachers, we should really add into our teaching curriculum how to support. How the instrument supports other people, because that's what it was designed to do.
Regardless of what you can do with it, or if it's electric or upright, or
Sure. All that flashy stuff is good. It gets attention, and I love it. I'm flashy too, but it's icing on the cake. Right? The icing might get somebody's attention. You go to the store to buy a cake, you might choose it because of what it looks like. But if you get home and you stick your fork in that cake and it's all icing, you are thoroughly disappointed. Right? 99% needs to be the boring stuff. It needs to be the cake. The icing is just that little thin layer. And our playing should be the same way.
Yeah. I have one last question, and again, thanks for taking this time.
You're welcome.
What can an organization like the ISB, or what can college professors do to include musical people who may not be at a certain level on an instrument, or a certain playing a certain way, to fit into what can people look for to distinguish a musical person who wants to grow?
Sure. Yeah, we needed to redefine what level we're talking about. Are we talking about level of proficiency on the instrument? Or are we talking about the level of their desire to become proficient? I don't care about how well you play. I care more about your desire to express yourself. Because if you have a desire, we'll get there. Right? Because a person has more desire. Some people have more desire and more willingness to work on it. Some just are natural ability people. But the person with the desire will go further in the long run. That's the whole story of the tortoise and the hare. And so if you just have to be good enough to participate, I don't think we're serving the people in the best way. I think we should be training people to have desire, training people to be curious, training people to have love for the music and for the instrument. That to me should be the greatest joy, because that's what's going to propel music and the instrument in the best direction, more than just ability alone. Anyone who practices enough will get the ability. That's easy. But most of the people who practice a lot, the better they get, the lower their love for it goes. And you see it, right? So to me, that's what we need to be more aware of and more cautious about, is, are we loving this? And if we exclude the people who don't have the ability but love it, then we're doing a disservice to everyone.
There you go. I've been speaking with Victor Wooten for this special edition of Bass World. Victor, thank you so much for taking this time.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you speaking with me.
I appreciate you as well. This is Mike Forfia, and you're listening to a special production from the International Society of Bassists. You can find this interview at www.isbconnect.org/Victor Wooten. If you'd like to find out more about Victor Wooten or about his music and nature camps, you can check him out online either at www.victorwooten.com or www.vixcamps.com.
There you have it, folks. Mike's conversation with Victor Wooten. I'm so glad to be able to put this out on the podcast. And again, I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. I would love it so much if you joined the International Society of Bassists. We have been going strong for half a century, and there are so many great reasons to be a part of the ISB. ISBworldoffice.com will give you all the information. It would mean so much to me if you joined this organization. That's it for today's episode. We will see you again soon here on the podcast and hope to bring you more special features from the International Society of Bassists soon.